The mother of all headaches awoke Jonathan. His wife had left him, sleeping in the arms of another man, as she had done for more than a year, and their marriage was over. After arriving at the bathroom, he crawled beneath the shower and allowed the chilly water to rouse him until it reached a comfortable temperature. After he showered and dried off, he evaluated himself in front of the mirror. She was, for the most part, correct. His hair was thinning on top and bare at the crown from a cheap haircut at the barber. Despite wearing a size 42 waist instead of the 34 he had graduated with, his belly was bigger than he would have liked. He appeared worn out and old, resembling the middle-aged men he had laughed at in his youth. He was certain he would never allow himself to become that way. He raised his arms. They were strong, but not the arms of a chubby middle-aged man. Work done by hand took care of that. The stomach must go. He swiveled his head, studying his hair from various perspectives. He discovered the old clippers from his brief period of beard growing beneath the sink while doing some searching. He gave in and shaved it since she had never been fond of it. After 5 minutes, Jonathan had taken out his razor and was pleased with the way he looked, with half a can of shaving cream giving his head the appearance of a white Kia Pet. It took him a few tries to get it right because he was new to this. Better, not great, but better. He leaned in closer to the mirror, removing 2 stray eyebrow hairs that appeared to be acting independently. The hairs in his nostrils, which regrettably grew more quickly than the hairs on the top of his head, were clipped by the tiny cuticle scissors. He was deliberately keeping his thoughts about what to do with his predicament to himself. Would he return her to her? Could he endure being married to a woman who had so casually abandoned their union, cuckolding him for a whole year, admitting it with no regrets or feelings of guilt, and then turning around to do it all over again? Her words are not as important as her actions, which made it clear that she could not be accepted. Not one. Perhaps a single unintentional misstep, but a continuous relationship with a man she professed to love, which she shoved in his face and demanded he accept or she would ruin his life. She was also fallible. Since the birth of their youngest child, she had gained at least 20 pounds. Her jugs were beginning to sag at the age of 34. Her hair had lost some of its lustrous shine. Not that he had any say in the matter, she now wore it short, saying it was easier to take care of. It had been 2 years, at most, since she had given his opinion any thought. Rubbing his chin, Jonathan gave up on shaving. There was no reason he couldn't wear a beard now, he'd always liked them. He looked through his clothes, most of them older since he preferred to spend money on his family rather than on himself. He gathered his least objectionable possessions and put on his best clothes in preparation for the first day of the rest of his life. He wasn't a CEO, affluent attorney, cunning CPA, or a former Navy SEAL. He was a straightforward diesel mechanic who was also very gregarious. He therefore took a car down to the bank. Withdrawing everything they owned, not that it was much, didn't take long. With the help of the overtime, they had saved up almost $7,000. They had barely been able to make ends meet before the overtime started. Their savings were never improved by anything other than his yearly bonuses and tax refunds. He crossed the street, opened a new bank account, and deposited a grand total of $1,000. They were grateful for his business, and in exchange, he received a new toaster oven. The next task was more difficult. Jonathan wrote his resignation letter by hand as he entered the Caterpillar dealership. Jonathan's boss attempted to dissuade him, but he was adamant. He gave the details of the situation, stating that his wife had been unfaithful to him for more than a year. He had no intention of making her pay for her new lover's life. He departed with the understanding that he would have a place if circumstances changed. He got his last paycheck with vacation time by the time he left. He had cancelled his company life insurance and switched to health insurance, removing his wife from it. He could get a separate policy to protect his kids, but not one for her. After taking care of the necessities, he went home and began making calls. He cancelled the one credit card between them. It was simple, they could not afford to accrue debt because of its low limit, and each month they paid it off. His wife was dropped from his cell plan after another call. Give it to her, perhaps her boyfriend could afford it. He became aware that he had skipped lunch and breakfast and was growing hungry. That morning was quite hectic. He was struck, as he was looking in the refrigerator, that while Susan might not have been pleased with his beer gut, she certainly did not make it any better. The refrigerator was empty of any nutritious food, including soda, chips, cold cuts, bacon, quick dinners, and, of course, beer. It makes sense why they had gained so much weight. Jonathan scrambled some eggs and used them to make a sandwich. About the best he could manage, though hardly the healthiest meal ever. After taking the initial steps, he didn't know what to do next. His response had been instinctive. His first instinct last night was to lose it, go out to drink, and wallow in a little self-pity. His response in the morning was to defend her and to cease being her supporter. He did not know what to do now. His head was swimming from all that he had to process. His marriage was over because his wife was a liar who had an affair. It seemed more than he could manage on his own. He turned to face his grandfather and made his way to his home. If he had to choose between speaking with his mother and his grandfather Max, he would pick the elderly man. Because his mother was a woman, he feared that she might support his wife in the best interests of the family and the children at that particular time. Grandpa would give him the straight word, or at least an honest assessment. The 79-year-old was taken aback when his grandson showed up at his door. Grandpa Max only addressed him as John, asking, "John, what's with the new look?" Jonathan stroked his shiny dome introspectively. "Grandpa, I need advice." Father Shredder was a relic, descended from German immigrants. Grandpa had expanded the ranch his father had hewn out of the wilderness. A straightforward man with few friends who shared his values, the ones he did have were devoted. His rules were strict and there were consequences if they weren't followed by his kids. His mother would still talk about the day she was driven to tears because she was wearing a skirt that exposed some of her knees. You could call him archaic, but in an era of slick-talking attorneys and 50-page contracts, his integrity and values were essential to the ranch's expansion and prosperity. Max Shredder's handshake was their common bond. The eldest uncle, Lynn, occupied the ranch and resided in the spacious Rambler, which was situated approximately 100 yards away from the former homestead. As he was raised, he upheld the values of his family: hard work, justice, integrity, and friendship. The story was out in less than 30 minutes. The old man was not amenable to deception, trickery, or lying, especially when family was involved. His only query was, "How are you going to get rid of her?" "It's not that simple. We have 3 kids. She's a cheating 304. You take the kids and throw her bum out." Jonathan was grinning. Would that it were that simple. It doesn't work that way anymore, Grandpa. The mothers almost always get the kids, especially since she's the caregiver. She gets half of everything, probably a lot more than that. I'll have to pay child care for 3 kids and maintenance to take care of her, since she can't work, won't work. You mean lazy bum cheating 304? Jonathan was taken aback by the old man's remarks. Seldom did he hear the elderly man curse, at least not in that way, or in front of children or women. Jonathan was obviously no longer a child. "It's the law, Grandpa. I don't like it, but I suspect she's right about most of that. She figures she has me over a barrel and is going to force me to take my medicine." He stood up and grabbed his old phone, a rotary dialer made like a tank, saying, "I don't believe this stack of manure you're spreading." The phone was older than Jonathan, he knew that. His grandfather hung up after the brief response. "Bill, Max here. I need your expert opinion on something. How long before you can get your sorry bum off of that couch and over here?" he said. Jonathan knew they had no equity in the house, not after 2 years. "What's the plan?" "I want to get rid of the house. Can't afford it. I was hoping the kids and I could stay here. I'm not going to pay for her to live the good life with her son of a witch lover. Let her find somewhere to live." He felt it. 2 calendar years. She turned on the BM light next to her at the same moment. She begins an affair and begs for the house. Yes, it's true that she loved him deeply. His grandfather gave a nod. "No problem. Still have for empty rooms around here filled with 50 years of junk. It'll be nice to have young blood around. Who's going to watch them while you're at work? I'm not going to work. Let her get her child support and alimony from an unemployed man. How are you going to get by? I was kind of hoping Uncle Lin would let me work on the ranch under the table. I've got experience. Spent enough summers sweating here. He can pay you, and you can make sure the kids don't do without. Maybe I could take a token salary to pay my expenses. I don't figure on needing much: car insurance, food, clothing. His grandfather stared at him. No token salary. A man lives under my roof, he works. We'll figure out a way to get around her getting any of your money. We'll have to see about some kind of caretaker for your kids. Jonathan heard a truck arrive in the driveway. The loud, booming sound of the large diesel engine could be clearly heard inside. He got up to open the door, but his grandfather's oldest friend, Bill Wesley, entered without a knock. The newcomer asked, "What's got your damn panties in a bunch, Max?" Bill had to explain the situation for a further 20 minutes before he lost patience. Mostly true. She's likely to get the kids, and Sonny Boy will be expected to pay child support, keep up the mortgage, and support her cheating bum as well. You said her lover gave her the advice? He's a lawyer, Jonathan replied. Big screw up there. That's not kosher. Could get him disbarred. What do you know about him? Nothing. He's younger and a divorce lawyer. That's all I've got. That, and apparently, his wife died in an accident a couple of years ago. He was driving. Can't be many of those around. Let me make a few calls and see what I can find out. He was clearly thinking. What have you done about finances? Entered the accounts, quit my job, good. A lot of these new panty-waist lawyers will tell you to only take half. She'll get half eventually, but don't make it easy on the 304. Make her fight for it. Stay in control. Why'd you quit the job? I was working too much overtime. I'll be damned if I'm going to let the courts base their child support and alimony on 60-hour work weeks. Can't pay much if I'm broke and out of work. Any chance of you getting your boss to fire you instead of quitting? The courts will look a lot more kindly on that. If you quit, they figure out what you can afford based on past earnings. If you get fired, there's a lot more wiggle room. At the older man's analysis, Jonathan grinned. Only a few years ago did Judge Bill Wesley retire from the district court, having served for more years than he could recall. He would be the greatest authority on how things operate. Her family's putting up with this crap. Doesn't sound like the Finans I know. They don't know yet. Nobody knows. She wants us to keep it secret. The hell you say? He took what appeared to be a 10-year-old flip phone out of his pocket and said, "Damn 304 thinks she can hide her cheating ways, does she?" He then waited for the voice on the other end of the call for a minute. "Jimmy, Bill here. Got some hard news for you. I hate to be the one to tell you. No, nothing like that. Your granddaughter Susan, married to the Fremont kid, she's cheating on him." "No, I'm not kidding. No, didn't catch her or anything. She came out and told him last night. Said she's been doing it for a year. She's not leaving, at least not according to her. She wants him to be good with it and allow her to keep screwing around." "Hell no, of course not. You think he's some kind of idiot?" "Yeah, I know, tough to hear. Always was a selfish little witch. Not sure yet, but it ain't looking good. I thought you should know. Sorry to be the messenger." "Sure, I'll tell him." Bill looked at Jonathan, his eyes glimmering with rage. Broke her grandpa's heart, the 304 did. Nobody wants to think their kids would grow up to be like that. He's sorry, he says. Thanks. Damn, this is so hard to believe. His grandfather raised his voice. You said she might be back today. You need to get home and control things. Make sure you make it damn clear you're not going along with what she's doing. No man in his right mind would. I think I've already done that. How are you going to deal with that monstrosity of a house you bought? I figure I'd let the bank take it. The elderly judge spoke up. If her name's on the deed, she can stop you. I don't know what else to do for now. I'd say stay in the house, control your finances, and stop making payments. You never heard it from me, but you can hide your money, stash cash, drive up to Oklahoma, and lose most of it in the Indian casinos. Take a couple of months if you can stand it. Get your ducks in a row and get so far behind in your payments there's no way out. Then you deal with her. You divorce her. Now, your bum is grass. Play her on your line a bit, set your drag lightly. His grandfather examined him. I hate to be the one to say it, but you've let yourself go, boy. You're going to be back on the market soon. You might take this time to get yourself ready. The stupid witch thinks you can't get a woman. Her box is gold-plated. There ain't nothing easier in the world. We'll have you back in the saddle in no time. Regarding the matter, Jonathan was a little too sensitive. I'm not the only one who let themselves go. She's not perfect. The elderly man chuckled. No, but that don't matter. Any decent-looking woman willing to spread her legs will always find someone to park between them. There's no denying she's still a fine-looking broad. More's the pity. I hope you ain't looking for that kind of relationship. Your kids are going to need a real woman, not some 304. I'm not ready to be dating, Grandpa. Besides, I'm still married. Not in spirit, you're not. She left you, remember that. You had no choice in the matter. She has a new love now. Whatever you think you had is over. You don't owe her nothing. Hell, we can sit talking all day, but it ain't going to get us nowhere. Head on home. I'll talk to Lynn about taking you on. Stop by tomorrow. We'll gab some and see what Bill finds out. Having had his elders validate his feelings and reactions to his wife's ambush, Jonathan felt better when he got home. There was little to occupy his time, and he was already missing his family. He questioned whether he hadn't gone a bit too far in leaving his work and closing the account so fast. It's too late to worry about milk spills. He didn't react to whatever the witch insisted was her right, so at least he felt a little more in control. He rummaged through the refrigerator once more, attempting to decide what to have for dinner. He turned to look at the large stack of carry-out menus that was next to the refrigerator and grimaced. It makes sense that they were overweight and in debt. He tossed the menus and the TV dinners in the garbage. He drove out to the supermarket and filled the basket with healthier options when Susan didn't call or show up by 7 o'clock. Susan was there to greet him when he arrived home. With a shocked glance at him, she took a step back. Jonathan surprised everyone with his new look. Susan, he said composedly as he made his way to the kitchen with the 6 grocery bags he was carrying. She went after it. I wanted to say I'm sorry for the way things turned out last night. None of that came out the way I wanted it to. I didn't mean to hurt you. Are you calm now? Sober? Can we talk like adults? He sighed. Didn't matter how you said it. Knowing you'd thrown our marriage away for some young stud was going to hurt, no matter what. You get some more great sex last night? She chided herself once more. She had mentioned sex, but why? She was aware that it would damage him. It was always about the sex with men. Why was he unable to realize that was the least of their issues? Please, Jonathan, I shouldn't have said anything about sex. It was unconscionable. Making love to you is wonderful. That's not the issue. He chuckled. Not anymore it isn't, that's for sure. I wouldn't touch your cheating kitty with a 10-foot pole. What do you want, Susan? He said something that shocked her. In their 11 years of marriage, he had never spoken to her like that. Though she was starting to get angry, she tried not to show it. She didn't require a rerun of the previous evening. I want you to understand what I'm going through. This isn't easy for me. I didn't mean to fall in love with him. I only wanted to help him through a difficult time. It doesn't have to affect us at all. I love you and I'll never leave you. Got it? Now you're in love with him? I understand. Thank you for that. Anything else you want to say? Maybe you'd like to open my chest, tear my heart out, and dance on it. Please, tell me how I'm inadequate, how I can't fulfill your needs, how I deserve to be treated like scum. I'm sure you've practiced lots of pointed little barbs to hurt me as much as you can. Have the whole damn conversation planned like the one you ambushed me with last night. No, Jonathan, I don't want to hurt you. I love you. You're my husband, the father of my children, my soulmate. I'll always love you. I just need to be there for him. Can't you understand? This is important to me, to us. So go to him. I have no desire to be in the same house as a cheating wife who doesn't want me. Go, please. Your presence here sickens me. She was weeping. I know you don't mean that. You're only trying to hurt me. I know you love me and you come to see what's best for all of us, for the children. I'm going to bring them home tomorrow. They don't need to know about the problems we're having. Nobody needs to. This is between us. I expect if we have any issues, we can take them up in private. And what am I supposed to say when you're spending the night at Lover Boys? I don't do that. I never have until last night, and I didn't intend to then. You scared me last night with your drunken, loudish behavior. I thought you might hurt me. I couldn't stay here. I've never done that before. Things can be just as they have been for the last year. I don't think so. I guess if you're waiting until tomorrow to pick them up, it means you'll be spending the night, spreading your 304 legs for Loverboy again. Please don't call him that. He's a nice man, a good man, right? The kind of man that can't find his own woman, has to steal another man's wife. So nice, so good, so honorable. Go to him already, before I throw up. She stood and began to walk away. I'm going to let you have some time, she replied. I understand this comes as a shock to you. I wish there had been an easier way to say it. I love you and never wanted to hurt you. You could tell me it's a lie, that my loving wife really isn't a cheating 304. Damn it, Jonathan, I'm not a 304. I can't believe you can say that. I'm not running around on you. This isn't some tawdry affair. I love the man. You calling me names and insulting me isn't helping anything. Are you trying to force me to divorce you and destroy your life? Did you love him the first time you spread your legs for him? When you broke your vows, abandoned your family, and became a cheating 304? Did you love him then? She opened her mouth. He was not wrong. She relived the guilt of the first time, crying all the way home and telling Rich they would never do it again while she was in the shower until the water turned cold. Though had taken care of him, loved him? It's not that she had loved him. He made her feel needed, and she liked that. Angry that he had made her feel bad for doing something that was right and good, she turned and walked away. Once, he had needed her. She walked away. It was difficult for him to resist going back to finish the remaining portion of the GI Beam. Rather, he took a long walk, made a salad, and ate a skinless chicken breast. It didn't improve his mood, but at least it kept him from getting worse. Setting off the alarm, Jonathan arrived at his grandfather's house by 8 a.m. and was greeted like any other workday. To his surprise, the entire crew of the old man was waiting. They were a close-knit community. A picture of all 5 of them, decked out in their green uniforms as Eagle Scouts, rested on the mantel above the fireplace. All their lives, they had been the best of friends. It's difficult to imagine having 4 reliable best friends in this day and age. They had always taken on problems head-on as a group for more than 60 years. It was lucky for Jonathan to have them in his corner. Following him into the dining room, a lavish farm breakfast spread with 7 place settings was in place. Jonathan turned to face the other direction and noticed his Uncle Lynn was also present. After he sat down, Bill's wife emerged and offered coffee to anyone who requested it. Daryl's wife showed up behind her, proudly carrying a plate full of hotcakes that were each at least 8 inches high and as wide as the plate. Jonathan chuckled. "My diet is gone," he declared. A few of the hotcakes were stabbed by Uncle Lynn and landed on Jonathan's plate. "Enjoy. Trust me, working as a ranch hand is going to burn off any calories you can get in your system. You're starting at the bottom, along with Bill and his grandfather." 2 of the other men were retired. Dole Smith had been a career Army officer and put in another 12 years as a civilian teaching after his retirement. At 30 years as a bird colonel, he still did the occasional substitute teaching, but not more than a few weeks a year. James Crum was another of the old German immigrants and owned the ranch that butted up to Grandpa's on the south. His 2 sons ran it now, but he kept his hand in and attended all the cattle auctions religiously. A Vietnam War vet, he joined with Daryl but left the service after 2 tours when his older brother died, leaving him in line to get the ranch. Carl Jenkins' family owned the first market in town and the hardware store. They'd been the well-to-do family, their livelihoods independent of the weather, the cost of feed, and the vagaries of the beef market. Apparently, they were all aware of his situation. Once the friendly chatter slowed, Bill started in. "First and foremost, you have our complete support. We have discussed our wives in the conversation, if that is okay with you. With a woman's perspective, they might be able to assist. You had to understand there was no way to keep them out of it once we got involved." "No issue at all, sir. I recognize." "All right. How well informed is your mother?" he inquired. "Not yet. I have only told you and Grandpa so far. She must be aware. She'll be very upset to learn that her brother and father received the news before her." "Okay, how about today?" Jonathan nodded, not anticipating this kind of talk. "All right. The name of the scum sucker is Rich. Pat was employed by Bell and Richards as a paralegal. It seems that following his wife's passing, he returned to finish his law degree. It was made possible by a large insurance payout. I'm not sure if he's cleared the bar yet, but it seems likely. Reportedly a pretty smart guy who was also popular. Doesn't lessen the scum sucker in him. Everyone at the law firm appears to be aware of your wife's involvement, even though I know you don't want to hear this. The only thing about her marriage they were unaware of." Jonathan saw that the 4 older women were standing close to the kitchen, listening in, and that the ex-judge had the entire group's attention while they were eating breakfast. It appears that she has been hiding that little fact. "The only real question before we start in is if there's any chance at all of reconciliation," Jonathan said, taking a bite of the thick-cut bacon that had been smoked with apple. "You mean she's the mother of your 3 kids under 10? Number 5, 8, and 10, Jonathan's grandfather raised his hand and said. "Boy, do you want her back? That is the key query. Can you please take her back after a year of cheating?" One of the women, Maximilian, yelled at Jonathan, "You have no right calling her a 304. Her side of the tale has not been told to us. Don't add to the already challenging situation." The judge turned to face his wife, Judith, saying, "You promised to stay out of the way until you were asked what you thought. You can't railroad him, I won't allow that. We're all aware that she made a mistake. The boy has the option to attempt to resolve the situation for the benefit of the family. Avoid making her appear less attractive than she already is. She wants him to accept that a new man has entered their lives after she spent a year unfaithfully playing around with another man. What other name would you give a woman who has been having an affair for more than a year and won't give it up?" "I don't know," Jonathan replied. "It's up to them to work it out if they want to. Let him decide on his own." Jonathan spoke up. "She came over again last night, didn't stay, went back to her lover. No apologies other than she says she didn't mean to hurt me. No intention of stopping her affair, still threatening me. I can't accept that." The colonel's wife, Diane, spoke up. "That's not going to happen, Jonathan. She's the mother of your kids, like it or not. She'll be in your life for the next 13 years at least, unless you plan on abandoning your children. They're my kids, my responsibility, Jonathan snapped. Understood, but they're hers too. You can divorce her, but if it's bitter, hurtful, you're going to have to live with that for the next couple of decades, Diane said. Hurtful like telling me she had an affair for a year and he was a better lover than me? That she was keeping him whether I liked it or not. And if I caused any trouble, she'd divorce me, make me pay, and laugh while I lived out of a cardboard box, supporting her? Jonathan replied angrily. His grandfather stood up. Ladies, we invited you here to provide your advice and wisdom. You agreed to stay out of it until you were asked for your input. I don't think you're helping at the moment. Please leave us alone for now, and we'll get you involved once he's made his decisions on how to move forward. There was a little grumbling, but the women moved out to the living room, leaving the men alone. What do you want, Jonathan? As simply as you can state it. I want her out. I want the kids. I don't want to support her. I don't want to be paying for her to have a good time with her lover. I want him to suffer, if I can. Both of them, if I'm totally honest with myself. I'd like to break them up, maybe even make them hate each other. The older men looked at each other, and they all slowly started to grin. The colonel nodded. Good, we're all on the same page then. It's war. Battle lines are drawn. Now it's a matter of tactics. 3 hours of non-stop discussion and arguing had the basic plan in place. The women were brought in at that point over lunch, and though they weren't happy with the decision, they supported it. Jonathan called his house and left a message. I won't be home tonight, he said. Tomorrow night either. I'll see you Sunday. Leaving the Eagles and their wives to deal with the first order of business, Jonathan headed for his mother's house, wanting to be there when she got off work. She greeted him in surprise at his new look. What brings you over? You could have called. I need to talk to you, Mom. It's important. She was crying only minutes into his explanation. No chance you'll take her back? She's the mother of your children, Jonathan. She's given you 11 good years, 9 really. That's when she started seeing her lover. Is divorce the only solution? Nobody wins in divorce. I don't see any other way, Mom. Honestly, she won't give him up. She loves him. She says she's been screwing him for a year. I can't accept that. His mother nodded. It breaks my heart, baby. I have to tell you, mine too. Believe me. What can I do? You need help watching the kids on the weekends or evenings? Right now, I'm staying in the house. I'm not starting the divorce yet. She may want to before long. I'm not going to help her though. I'm not going to pay for her to be with her new love. I'm cutting her off. She wants money, she's going to have to get a job. I'll pay for the house and food and take care of the kids, but she's not getting a dime unless it's court-ordered. His mother nodded. She probably should get a job. She's going to need it once you two are through. I want you to go with me to talk to her parents. I don't want them watching the kids while she's out screwing around on me. I'm sure they wouldn't do that, his mother said anxiously. They've been doing it. The only question is, did they know why? 20 minutes later, they were knocking on the Finnegans' front door. Jonathan, you look so different, Susan's mother said. You've already missed them. Susan picked up the kids over an hour ago. Actually, I came to speak to you and Dad. Can we come in? Of course, Carolyn. Nice to see you. Can I get you a drink? She called into the house. Terry, Jonathan, and his mother are here. A soft drink would be nice, his mother said. Ginger ale, his mother nodded, and he said, I'll take the same. Thank you. They were seated in the living room when Brenda brought them their drinks, with Terry following close behind. Brenda sat down. Is something the matter? You don't look well. He nodded. I'd like you to stop covering for Susan while she's having her affair. Brenda acted like she'd been slapped, and Terry turned red. How the hell can you say something like that? Terry growled angrily. For a year, she's been seeing her lover, and you watch the kids while she does. I'd like you to stop that. I think it's beneath you to support her cheating on me. Brenda was the first to speak. That's ridiculous. She loves you and the kids. She's not having an affair. We certainly wouldn't cover for her if she was. She spent the last couple of nights at her lover's house while you watched the kids. She told me 2 nights ago she was in love with him and had been seeing him for the last year. She doesn't see him at night. She's home with her family. That means she sees him during the day. I doubt she takes the kids with her. Do you mean to tell me you haven't been watching our kids several times a week for the last year? Brenda sat with her mouth open. She said she was doing volunteer work at the battered women's shelter. Unless the scum sucker beating her, the only thing battered is our marriage, Jonathan said. Terry looked distraught. She told you she had an affair? Is having an affair? She refuses to give him up. She says she loves him. But she wants me to take care of her and the kids? I'll be damned if I'm going to be paying her to screw another man. Brenda was on the verge of tears. I can't believe it. I can believe she'd use us to cover for her cheating. I'd like you to please stop. You're helping her destroy our marriage. There's no hope for us as long as she's seeing him. Can you understand that? Terry's face was red. You have no fault in this, I suppose. Were you cheating on her? No, you have no cause to imply I was. My only fault was working too many hours to pay for that damn house she had to have and to keep her in new lingerie for her boyfriend. Maybe I may have let myself go a little, put on some pounds, worked too many hours, came home too tired to pay enough attention to her. Maybe. I don't see how that's any reason for her to take on a new lover for a year. Do you think that's right? His wife's father glared at him. I don't know what's right or wrong. I'm only hearing one side of this story. I'll save my judgment until I hear her side. Sure, I understand. Daddy's little girl can do no wrong. She couldn't be a cheating 304, could she? Stop watching the kids so she can screw around, Jonathan snapped. I think you should leave now, Terry growled angrily. That works for me. What kind of people cover for their daughter so she can be a cheating 304, abandoning her kids all the time to get screwed by some young guy? Who raises that kind of kid? Jonathan replied testily. Terry screamed, his Irish temper in full bloom. Carolyn couldn't believe how belligerent it had become so quickly. She looked across at Brenda sorrowfully. Jonathan ignored them, headed for the door. Congratulations on raising a 304, Dad. Good job, he sniped as a parting shot. His mother snapped at him, how could you speak to them like that? I wanted him angry. She'll feel the brunt of it if she's been hiding it from them. If not, if they knew about it, then screw them. They deserve it. Jonathan headed north for the Oklahoma border. His mission, he'd been told, was to collect as many losing receipts as he could, get a hotel room for a couple of nights, do a little gambling, and maybe get his ashes hauled. He felt no guilt over the idea of sleeping with another woman. The moment his wife confessed to her year-long affair and said she was going to keep seeing the scum sucker, their marriage was over. Now they were just marking time until the paperwork was done. His phone had started ringing within minutes of leaving town, but he turned it off before he even hit the state border. He figured that would be hitting the fan. Oh well, she made her bed, let her sleep in it. Not like the 304 wouldn't have company. He tried his luck at a couple of tables, then hit the bar. It wasn't half an hour later that he was talking to a gorgeous woman who had AS for his pain and was willing to rent it to him. He felt a fleeting ping of guilt paying $400 for a woman like he was cheating, then he laughed to himself. The witch had done it for a year, why shouldn't he? At least he wasn't getting emotionally involved afterward. As he escorted her out of his room, he grinned. Damn, best sex I've had in years, he thought. The woman had the body of a goddess and gave him unlimited access. Best $400 he ever spent. For $100, the cheating 304 wife would never get her hands on him. The following day, he wandered the casino for a while. He played a little craps and some poker, losing a couple of $100. He picked up dozens of receipts in the keno and sports betting rooms, thousands of dollars worth. He took in the show and found another good-looking woman who was more than happy to exchange her favors for a few $100. Not as young or pretty as the previous night's guest, she was closer to his age and very easygoing. He managed to get her for only $300 and got even more use out of her than he had the tall blonde the night before. He figured it had to last. He'd be damned if he would be having sex with his 304 of a wife anytime soon. It was so good he tipped her an extra $50. She gave him a business card and asked him to look her up anytime he needed company. He saved it. Jonathan felt sad but lonely in the big bed that night. He thought about his wrecked marriage and all the things his wife had done with her younger, better lover. The witch! How could she do that to him, to her only children? How selfish could one person be, giving up her marriage for some stranger screwing her? What kind of man would set out to steal another man's wife? Figures it would be a lawyer, scum of the earth. He slept in the following morning, stood in front of the mirror, and cleaned up. He shaved his head, carefully checking for any rough spots, then applied the aftershave lotion. He trimmed his beard where it was coming in, neatening it. He almost didn't recognize the man in the mirror. Jonathan pulled into his driveway a little after noon. His wife's car was there, so he girded himself for battle, walking into the house. The kids saw him first and swarmed him, laughing, wanting to touch his head, asking him where his hair was, why didn't he come home? His wife was glaring at him, anger seething just below the surface. He laughed with the kids. Daddy had some business to take care of out of town. I'm back now, and I shouldn't have to go away again anytime soon. Susan had moved closer. We need to talk, dear, she whispered. Soon. I'd like to spend some time with my kids now that they're not at your parents' house. Jonathan sat down in front of the TV with the kids, talking about their time with their grandparents. I bet you like staying with them, don't you? You get to see them a lot more than your other grandmother, a lot more, Cindy, the oldest, said. Grandma picks me and Joey up after summer school. The plot thickens, Jonathan thought, and she watches Nancy. Little Nancy nodded. Susan was standing over them. Jonathan, I'd really like to talk now, she said. I'd really like to have a faithful wife, Jonathan snapped. Looks like neither of us is going to get our wish. She stepped back as if he'd slapped her. Is this what you want? Hash it out here now in front of the kids, she hissed. No. I'll talk to you when I'm good and ready. It took you 2 years to talk to me, now you're in some kind of big hurry, Jonathan told her, his cold eyes staring at her. She turned, sobbing, and ran into their bedroom. Why is Mom crying? Joey asked. Your mom's been very naughty. She knows she's in trouble, Jonathan explained. Did she break something? Nancy asked. Breaking something was the worst thing you could possibly do. Yes, she did, he answered. Her wedding vows, his heart, their marriage. He spent a few more minutes with the kids, bracing himself for the coming confrontation. He entered the bedroom and closed the door behind him. How could you? Susan shrieked. I told you we didn't need to get my parents involved. I told you I didn't want you screwing around, Jonathan said calmly. Where the hell were you the last 2 nights? Out where? Where were you the last 2 years? Where's out? What are you up to? None of your business anymore. Once you chose him over me, you lost any rights to ask me that. She tired of that line of argument. Why doesn't my phone work? I cancelled your service, just like I cancelled your health insurance, like I cancelled your credit card, Jonathan explained. Why? Why would you do that? Are you so petty? I'm not going to be the one paying you to screw around on me. You want to be a 304, you do it on your own dime, Jonathan explained. I'm not a 304. I fell in love with another man. Are you so shallow, so selfish you can't see the difference? Susan said, tears glistening in her eyes. So, I'm the selfish one because I want my wife to remember her wedding vows, to stay faithful to me and our children. Don't bring the kids into this. No, you did that, getting rid of them every day so you could spend your time in bed with your lover, Jonathan replied testily. We didn't spend our time in bed. I took care of him. I helped him. He needed me, Susan defended. How exactly did you take care of him, Susan dearest? Don't be a smartass, Jonathan retorted. I cooked, I did his laundry, cleaned up a little. I accompanied him out sometimes, we talked. He took time to talk with me, he understands me, doesn't ignore me for the television and beer, Susan explained. So, you were his wife, cooking for him while we ate carry-out, talking with him when you ignored me and abandoned your kids. You traded this family for another one. Fine, let your other husband pay for your cell phone, for your insurance. Let him give you spending money, buy you nice clothes, trade sex for money from the man you're not married to. You say you're not a 304, why are you doing this? Jonathan asked. It doesn't have to be this way. We were happy for the last year, weren't we? I never made you do without. Why can't we go back to being that way? Don't you love me at all? Did you ever love me? She whined. I didn't know you were a cheating 304 then. Now, every time I see you, I picture you in the arms of your lover, who gives you great sex, your younger man. It's not about the sex, Susan, not at all. You've got to get past that, give your fragile ego a break. It's about the love and companionship. He cares for me, and I care for him. We love each other. The sex is only an expression of that love. I never said he was better than you, it's different, that's all. I still love you, I need him, Susan tried to explain. That's fine, see him all you want. I don't care. But as long as you're seeing him, I'm not paying for it. He loves you, he can pay your way. Don't think he hasn't offered, he's rich, not like you working day and night to barely keep a roof over our heads, she shrilled angrily, immediately regretting her words. Which is it, Susan? Is it love, or are you simply looking to trade up? You're angry 'cause I work my bum off to give you the house you wanted, to take care of our children. I work 60 hours a week to make sure you have whatever you need. What do? You don't work, you don't take care of the kids, you hardly ever cook anymore. What do you do for this family that I'm busting my bum over? Jonathan asked. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. I've always appreciated how hard you work for us. You just make me so angry. Why can't we have things the way they were? Stop seeing him, be a loving, faithful wife and a good mother, then we'll see if things can't be the way they were for a good 9 years before you threw your marriage away, Susan pleaded. I threw nothing away. I always was here for you. I only saw him when you were working and the kids were in school. I've always placed my family first, like you did the 2 nights you spent at his house when I was working, when the kids were at school. You drove me to him, you know you did. I was scared of you. The second night, you begged me to go to him. I know, it's always my fault. You did nothing wrong, Susan defended herself. I didn't. I can't help the way I feel, Jonathan. Inside, this is getting nowhere. Are you going to stop seeing him? Susan asked. No, then you're on your own. This is my bedroom, you're welcome to stay here, but I'm not leaving. I'll continue to feed you in your home, and I'll keep the car paid for and insured to make sure you can take care of the kids. Things are going to be tight around here, Jonathan stated. Why? What do you mean, tight? Susan asked. I quit my job. It was interfering with my family too much. I'll be working for Uncle Lynn. I won't be making near the money, but we can squeak by if we're careful. No more wasteful spending, Jonathan explained. I never waste money, she said. How much gas do you use driving to Rich's house and your parents every day? How many lunches, coffee house meetups? Jonathan asked. It took a few seconds before she realized what he'd said. How? How? Who said his name was Rich? Richard Patton. Rich, to his 304s. Paralegal and dilettante, living off the money he made killing his wife. Some lover you have there, Jonathan said. It's not like that. He didn't kill her, it was an accident, it wasn't his fault. And he's not a paralegal, he's a lawyer. He's finished law school and passed the bar exam. He's not a dilettante, he must work awfully hard since he can spend all his days screwing you. Stop saying that, she screamed. Jonathan glared at her. I thought you were the one who wanted to do this in private. If you're going to start screaming, we might as well invite the kids in. We don't spend all of our days screwing. If you have to know, we only make love a few days a week. Do you ever have sex with me on the days you screw him? Jonathan asked. She blushed. I told you, it's not about the sex. God, Susan, you were such a 304. You disgust me. Does it thrill you to make me screw you when you've been with your lover? Do you ever make me go down on you after you've been with him? How much of a cuck have you made me? Jonathan demanded. No, Jonathan, don't say that. I would never do anything like that. I always clean up after I'm with him. I wouldn't do that to you. I love you. I wouldn't flaunt it like that. I don't want to hurt you. Please, can we not talk about this? I love you, honey. I want things to be wonderful between us. Can't you let me have this? I'll make sure you never regret it, I promise. Jonathan shook his head. Tell me when you stopped seeing him. If I'm still around, we can see if there's anything left to salvage of our marriage. He turned and walked out the door, unwilling to continue the useless conversation. He made himself a sandwich and watched his wife take call after call in the bedroom. She walked up to him while he was cleaning up in the kitchen. That was my grandfather disowning me. Are you going to be a complete a-hole about this? Do you really want to start a pissing contest you can't win? She snapped. Stop seeing him, Jonathan said. I'm going out for a while. I'll be back for dinner. It would be nice if you took some time out of your busy schedule to cook something for once. You just got here, she whined. We still have to talk after dinner. Using the information the judge had acquired, Jonathan was standing on the doorstep of the tutor 10 minutes later. It was a nice house, larger than his own, far more than a single man needed. The door opened. Yes? Jonathan stuck his foot in the door. I want you to stop screwing my wife. You killed your wife, now you're killing my marriage. Stop. The slender, smaller man looked up in fear. He leaned against the door, pushing it closed, but it didn't budge. I don't know what you're talking about, the frightened man said. Stop screwing Susan Fremont, Mrs. Jonathan Fremont, my wife. Don't ever get in a car with her. If you kill her too, I'll hunt you down and make sure your last minutes on Earth are as miserable as possible. I don't want a killer screwing the mother of my children, Jonathan threatened. I'm not a killer. It was an accident, the frightened man said. You killed her. You're living off the money you made doing it. You spent that blood money seducing then screwing my wife. Stop it. If you don't, I will, and you won't like that, Jonathan warned. You can't threaten me, the man whined. Stop screwing her, you little worm. There are plenty of single women out there that the fee for killing your wife can buy you. Leave my wife alone, murdering scumsucker. Jonathan walked away, confident he'd gotten his points across. If Susan had been angry before, she was absolutely furious when he got home. She marched toward him angrily, and he strolled past her, lifting his youngest onto his lap, tickling her, getting her to giggle. I'd like to talk, please, Susan said, standing beside him. Then talk in private, he shrugged, happy to have yanked her chain once more. He walked back to the bedroom, his wife following him, closing the door behind them. You attacked him, threatened him, called him a killer, a murderer, she spat at her husband. Him? I'm not sure which him you're talking about, Jonathan asked. Goddamn it, you know good and well. What do you think you're doing? I told him I didn't want him screwing my wife anymore. I don't think that's unreasonable, Jonathan defended. You called him a killer, she said. Yes, I did. He is. He killed his wife. I told him I didn't want him driving you anywhere. I don't want him killing you, also. Even if you were a 304, you're still the mother of my children. He didn't kill her. It was an accident. You have no right saying that. He was driving, she died, he killed her just as dead as if he put a gun to her head. How could you? It almost destroyed him. He loved her. His depression was so bad, he almost died. It took me years to get him to where he is today, Jonathan explained. So, you're saying if I can get him depressed again, he might die and this nightmare will all be over? Jonathan asked. She stared at the man she'd been married to for 11 years. How could he have changed so much in so little time? Become so heartless, so unfeeling? You don't mean that. You couldn't, she stammered. I'd dance on his grave if it meant you becoming a good, faithful wife again and placing this family first, he looked into her eyes. She shivered. There was no doubt in her mind he was telling her the absolute truth. He needs me, Jonathan. If you ever loved me at all, you'll understand. He needs me. Let this run its course. Give me a little time. When he's strong enough to be on his own, I'll give him up. Can we do that, please? We won't have to talk about it. I'll be discreet. Nobody has to know. I'll be the perfect wife. Don't make this any worse. Do what you have to do, Susan. Obviously, I can't stop you. But as long as you're seeing him, you're my wife in name only. You'll live in this house and take care of the children, but our love will be on life support. I don't know how long it will last. I know you don't care, but it's only fair that you should know. Don't say I don't care, baby. I still love you. I'll show you. I only need a little while. If you can't accept that, then I will divorce you. I'll take your kids and your house, and I'll make rich their father. Is that what you want? That will never happen, Susan. You need to know that. How can you stop it? I have the law on my side. You'll pay. You'll work your bum off for kids you never see so I can have my love, my home, and my kids. You'll have nothing. Never happened, Susan. Take my word for it, he said sadly. Don't put it to the test, she stared at him nervously. He meant it, she could tell. 11 years together told her he was dead serious. You're not going to do anything stupid, are you? She asked. Stop seeing him and stop threatening me, he stared at her, daring her to challenge him. She was the first to blink, running into the bathroom crying at how it had possibly come to this. Carrot and stick, that was the plan for Susan. Hence, for the carrot Jonathan had received from the Eagles' wives, it made sense that a trio of 70-something women would know a thing or two about how the female mind operates. Obviously, I didn't have a clue, he thought. Susan was out of sorts after he'd shaken up her day, quite intentionally. He decided to handle the kids and give her some quiet time. He got them into bed eventually, although Cindy was fighting to stay up past 9 o'clock now that she was a big girl. He compromised, letting her stay up until 9:15 to cut off the discussion, and maybe a little to assuage his guilt over leaving for 2 days. With the house quieted down, he could hear Susan on the phone. It might have been lover boy, or maybe there was a friend or two she confided in. He didn't know, and at that moment, he didn't really care. Jonathan opened a bottle of wine and selected 2 crystal goblets for them. He knocked on the bedroom door and waited a moment for her to get off the phone. She eventually opened it, looking up at him sadly. "You don't have to knock. It's your bedroom," she said softly. He walked past her and put the tray down on the bedside table. He remembered her locking the door on him a few nights earlier. "His bedroom, right? I didn't want to interrupt you on the phone," he explained. "It was just my sister Jenny. She wanted to know what was going on. Everybody's talking, you know. You've really started a mess." He hadn't started anything. She was the one screwing around, cheating. Now was not the time to remind her of that. He poured out a glass for her, stood, and put it in her hand. "It's been a rough week, hasn't it?" He wanted her to open up, start talking. He'd listen as much as he could stand. She nodded. "Horrible. I never wanted this, Jonathan. I thought everything could be the same, not like this. Why do you have to make things so difficult?" He filled his own glass and patted the bed beside him. "Come sit by me. Let's talk quietly, civilly. I still love you, baby." She climbed on the bed, her bed shirt climbing up her thighs when she sat cross-legged facing him. "Talk, no yelling, no accusations." He reached out and rubbed her bare knee. "Yes, talk. What went wrong, Susan? How did I fail you that you needed to find what you were missing in another man's arms?" The ice around her heart started to melt. He did care. "It's complicated, honey. I love you. I never stopped loving you. Please tell me you believe that," she said. "Of course I do," he said, barely able to stomach the lie. "Would we be here if I didn't? It was never supposed to happen. It was all just a series of small, little things that kept building. I started talking to him at a party, and he was so sad and dejected over his life. I found myself trying to comfort him. The first time I got him to smile was a huge success. The first tentative laugh was a greater one. I felt so good, like what I was doing mattered." She looked at her husband nervously, and he just nodded. "It's wrong, I know, but I was tired of being just a mom and housewife. My days of mind-numbing repetition, taking care of a toddler, a 6-year-old, and an 8-year-old. I never seemed to have time for me. You were so busy all the time, I know. God, Jonathan, it hurts to even say it. I know you were doing it for us, for me, for the kids, for the family. But all you did was work and come home exhausted, and I felt unloved, like you didn't care for me. I was just a nanny and housekeeper." Jonathan reviewed the advice the older women had given him. Don't argue about what she felt, right or wrong. Let her come to the right conclusions on her own, steer her that way carefully, allow her to put some of the blame on him, accept it, and she'd feel all the more guilty. "I'm sorry, baby. I should have seen it. 10-hour days, 6 days a week, are pretty exhausting when you have a physical job like mine. It's no excuse for letting things slide between us. I appreciated everything you did, even though I might not have said it." She shook her head, eyes glistening. "I know it wasn't your fault. I could have talked to you more about it, but you seemed like you were slipping away. No time for me, for us. You were drinking more, you always seemed to be sitting on that couch with a beer in your hand. I started hating that damn couch and that TV. You always had time for them, but not for me." Jonathan let her vent. "I'm often under a lot of stress. It was something I did to try to relieve that. I didn't want you to feel the pressure I was under. We were letting people go, and there was more and more to do with tighter schedules. I should have talked to you about it instead of holding it in." She sniffled and wiped her eyes. "I was bored, and he became my project. That was all to start with. There was nothing there for a year. I didn't see him that way, I swear. I felt good helping him, watching him slowly pull himself together. I felt useful, and that's what I needed. That was our entire problem. It was never about a lack of affection, or our lovemaking, or falling out of love with you. I never stopped loving you. I was doing something that made me feel good, and I was proud. I wasn't doing anything wrong, except maybe spending too much time with another man. But it wasn't romantic, it was like a job, one I was doing well at. I can see how that could happen. Everyone needs to feel good about themselves. I had hoped that being a wonderful mother and terrific wife would have filled that need. I understand you weren't getting the feedback from us that you were from him. Jonathan was finding it harder to keep up the act. Doing nothing wrong? Then why did she hide it for a year?